right, are you all ready for the afternoon session? So we're going to say forgiveness granted. There's layers to this. Anybody have some regrets? What you didn't say, what you said? Made some mistakes? Well, today, this afternoon session is going to be about giving your yourself permission to let that go. And we have a wonderful group of panelists, and I'm going to introduce those ladies, and then they're going to come right up and take over. We have Britnee N. Smith. Britnee's gifts are bountiful. She is an entire experience. Wife, mother, author, podcaster, speaker, brand strategist, graphic designer, minister, singer, and serial entrepreneur. I had to take a couple breaths because she got a whole list there. We have Vanessa M. Gaskin, AKA Lady V, and prayer is her superpower. She is a woman of God, wife, mother, first lady. I know she got a cat collection. Veteran educator, author, writer, preacher, and fierce prayer warrior. And last but not least, we have Tara M. Cuff. Hey girl, I love that. She is 100% certified, a certified personal fitness trainer, certified Zumba instructor, certified yoga instructor, and certified woman of faith. Ladies, come on up. Forgiveness granted. There's layers to this. Let's break it down.
I hype me up, I gas me up, I hype me up, I gas me up, I hype me up, I gas me up. Take up space, sis. Got my room with this. Take up space, sis. I got my room with this. I'm a trip for this.
Black girl born fully equipped with daddy's eyes and mama's lips. You're smart and you're beautiful was the reoccurring script. Spoken generously, faithfully, sometimes even daily. See, my parents, they were building my self-esteem in the hopes that I could see what was always meant to be. Back then, a precious princess, young, gifted, and black, and today, the most capable Queen V. They were pouring in positivity, nullifying negativity, leveraging the longevity of their words, giving me incredible tools. But they were no match to the kids in middle school. Those kids didn't see my beauty. Instead, it was their duty to call me names that caused a level of shame to the way that I looked, the way that I saw myself, the way I spoke to myself, the way I thought about myself. I had co-signed on a dotted line to all their lies, their taunts, and their teases, and their lies, their attempts to reduce me down to size. But what I didn't realize was that they were in disguise, wrapped up in their own insecurities and their own incapabilities. Yes, it's true that sticks and stones can break my bones, but guess what? Words can be weapons that most definitely hurt. Imagine I said to myself what I wouldn't dare say to anybody else because it's rude and it's wrong, like an out-of-tune song that just plays in my head and fills me with dread when I should flow like the bad mamma jamma that God said was good. Note to self, girl, I'm sorry for every time that I allowed small minds to attack and I didn't fight back. In the words of Ebony Janae, I'm melanated, educated, and always imitated, but I could never, no, never be duplicated. So I'm releasing the baggage that I have held for so long. I'm unloading the lies that have silenced my song. I am freeing myself to be myself. God made me a boss with secret sauce. Who am I to disagree with how he forms me? Now I see, and I forgive me. Tara, forgiveness granted.
Got my room with this. I'm a trip for this.
Here comes the bride, all dressed in, well, actually, I've been married to this self-sabotaged, reckless, maladaptive, unproductive, and dysfunctional type of unforgiveness. And it has been counterproductive, ineffective, self-destructive, and downright exhausting. See, my guilt was wrapped up in grief from the loss of my daughter. Now, from that guilt, whether it was because of the lack of her father, or sometimes because I was a young mother and honestly just didn't want to be bothered. I was a young, independent, Black mother. I had on-the-job training. I had no tools, no instruction manual, and at that time, I had no resources. So I had that mom guilt, right? I had that you're a bad mother syndrome. I had that how dare you be a bad mother to your daughter, and now you want to be a better mother to your son after all of the wrong you had done? I had allowed the enemy to play and dupe me for so many years. But not another day where I live in that kind of fear, that torment, those lies of trying to equate me to what society deems a good mom, those lies that the enemy told me, see, I can finally lay it to rest. Because the truth of the matter is, it's my Father who knows best. And now that my mind and my soul and my spirit have come into alignment, I finally understood the assignment. Tara, I forgive you. So I'm done with self-pity because I am victorious. Because all I do is win no matter what. And every time I step into the building, everybody's hands go up. And they stay there. And they say yeah. And they stay there. Ladies, let that thing be laid to rest. Britnee, forgiveness granted.
I need you all to repeat after me. Say, I forgive me.
I forgive me.
I had something else prepared. It was something I thought you all would like. Something you'd applaud and celebrate and maybe even shout, I know that's right. What I had prepared was giving, I wonder what they want to hear. But today I'm giving, we all need what's on the inside of me to share. And I wanted to have it memorized so that you would all be impressed, as if somehow reading my words off of a page would make it less impactful and I'd be embarrassed. Oops, I almost did it again. Trying to measure up to what the world says I should be, I almost gave in to the lies, but today I forgive me. As a kid, all I wanted to do was be chosen by the cool kids. I wanted to be wanted by them all, but the girl inside of me, I kept her backed up against a wall, and that wall was called low self-esteem. But you're a queen, they said. What do you mean, they said? You'd be surprised by how such a creative mind could form so much doubt in you instead. I was born with the light. I didn't let it show. I carried weight. I take up space in this world, but I didn't want anybody to know. Because attention on me meant that they had a choice to either love me with their whole hearts or kill me with their voice. And those voices had me tripping. Approval I would seek, but if you live for man's approval, you'll die by man's critique. I forgive me for doubting my own greatness, for dimming the way I shine, for knowing what God says about me and still sometimes showing my behind, for fighting to fit in more than I fought to stand my ground, for letting the pain build up and letting myself down. I forgive me for thinking I could just blend right in with this face and this voice and this fine brown skin. Nah, I was made for excellence. I am the bar setter. I forgive me for ever thinking anybody else could do it better. To the little girl inside, we're getting off the struggle bus. I've got little eyes on me now, and I've got to let them know what's in us. I got to show them we're enough. I got to show them that authenticity is a must. So maybe you're like me and you've learned how to live multiple lives, how to shape shift into makeshift whatever anybody else needed at the time. Maybe you're exhausted from saying yes to the things that should have been absolute no's. Maybe you're covered in shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and it's time to get rid of those. I forgive me. We're all made in his image. That's what makes us great. Not whether you have children, a career, a business, or a mate. You have to be true to the woman within. You have to be you, and that's how we all win. I forgive me. You've got to forgive you. And setting yourself free is only something yourself can do. I forgive me for ever holding back. And I give myself permission to live. And this chick ain't never gonna look back. Tara, forgiveness granted. Lady V, forgiveness granted. Hey girl, hey girl, hey girl, forgiveness granted. For some reason, I want to say amen. So today's conversation, if you haven't guessed, is about forgiveness. But not just any kind of forgiveness, self-forgiveness. So Lady V, I want to ask you, what is forgiveness? And is there a difference between regular forgiveness and self-forgiveness?
Definitely. So forgiveness, and we all know this, that it is when you choose to let go of the hurt and the resentment and the anger that you may have towards someone because of an offense, whether it's perceived or real, you choose to let that go. And when we think about self-forgiveness, it's doing that for yourself. And it's a huge difference because we all know about forgiveness. We've heard the adages about how it's for us. It's not really the other person. But many times we're just not aware that we're walking around unforgiving towards ourselves. And so definitely it is a difference.
Tara, do you feel like it's easier to forgive others than it is to forgive yourself? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
So I definitely think that it can be easier to forgive others. When forgiving others, you can start to put it out of your mind and maybe even try to understand their behaviors. But when forgiving myself, sometimes the memory of what I've done has a tendency to repeat itself. So it's like, we have a tendency to rehearse what we've done. And I think it's one of those things where you have to live with yourself. And so sometimes when there's an offense that a person has done, yeah, I can let that go, and it might even take a little while. But for myself, especially when I don't equal up to what I thought I should have been, I then beat myself up because I'm like, I should have did better. And then it's one of them things where you have to continually kind of forgive yourself, especially when it came to that whole thing about mom guilt. My daughter passed away in 2008. By the time I started to really work on forgiving myself, it was 2017. So it took me a long time to let go of that, and then even recognizing, yeah, when I was a mother to her, I was young and didn't know a lot of things. And then when I became a mother to my son, I got to know him. And then I allowed myself to be able to recognize that I am worthy of being a great mother. So it takes time, but yes, it's definitely a difference.
Lady V, same question. Do you feel it's easier to forgive others than it is to forgive yourself?
Definitely, I think that, as I said before, we are very aware of other people and having that forgiveness for them. But when it comes to ourselves, I believe that there is guilt that is associated with it. There could be some embarrassment or shame associated with it. And I think that we have a tendency of constantly pressing the rewind button on our life and replaying the things. I mean, we're replaying things that happened in 7th grade and nobody else remembers it but you. And we will torture ourselves just playing it and playing it. And because of that, we have a difficulty forgiving ourselves. We also do a lot of negative self-talk. There's so much research that shows that there's thousands and thousands of thoughts that go through our minds in a day. And many of those thoughts can be self-criminating, they could be negative. And when we keep that tape recorder just playing and playing, it makes it difficult to let ourselves off of the hook.
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is throw the tape away.
Oh, yes,
Throw
definitely.
it out. Pull out the string out of the. I'm a millennial, y'all, but I used to pull them out. Don't tell my mom; she in the room. But there was something satisfying about pulling the tape out of the cassette, and that's what we need to do to the point where it can't be wound back in there. And when I think about the ease between forgiving someone else and yourself, when it comes to other people, you are the buffer. And so you're thinking about them in a sense, and it's easier to protect them from your wrath than it is to protect yourself from the wrath because you're with you all the time. And so there's no inner filter. So like you said, you beat yourself up and you put that picture up and you say, she's bad. When really, you're not your circumstance, right? We all navigate these different things and challenging situations in our lives. So what are some indicators, Tara, that you need to forgive yourself? Because I think there's sometimes we're like just going through life and we don't even realize that we're walking with unforgiveness toward ourselves. So what are some things that would help you to know, okay, wait a minute, I need to do some work here?
So I definitely think one of the indicators is the coulda, woulda, shoulda, which you mentioned in your spoken word. And, we have this tendency to look back and saying, well, I coulda did this or I shoulda did this. And when we do that, then it means we haven't really let that go. Like sometimes, for instance, when it takes about forgiving a person, when you see that person and you feel that all over again, then you haven't really forgiven that person. So it's the same thing for yourself. If you keep rehearsing this, coulda, woulda, shoulda, I shoulda did this or I shoulda did that, that is definitely an indicator that you still need to work on that. And I know for me, it was about going more so and just praying. Like, help me to let it go. I don't know how to let that go. And sometimes somebody say, girl, you got to let that go. Oh, well, how do I do that? That's the thing. Like, I understand and I need to let it go, but how? So for me, it was about just going to the Lord and praying and coming to the resolve, like, you know what? Don't rehearse that. All things work together for good. So there is nothing that's really wasted, even though it might be those indicators. It wasn't wasted. It's now going to work together. And maybe I went through that just to be able to help somebody else.
Lady V, same question.
If I were to ask all the ladies in the room, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? With 10 being you're the bomb.com. You may have some scars and some bruises, but you know that you bring worth and value to every table. You fill every space with the wonder of you. And if you cannot say, I'm a 10, then there's definitely an opportunity for you to show yourself some grace and for you to forgive yourself. Because the truth of the matter is you are a 10. No matter, you're sitting in here, no matter what's going on in your life, we need to realize that whatever's happened to us, that was just a lesson to learn, and it wasn't a place for you to live in. We should see our failures and our hiccups and our mess ups as, all right, what did I learn from that? But if you're still holding on to it and you rate yourself a 7 or a 9.5, then there's room for self-forgiveness, because you're a 10 all day, every day. You are a 10.
Absolutely. And I think one of the indicators for me where I know that self-forgiveness needs to take place is when there are opportunities that arise and I shy away from them. Because there's something either that happened or something that I taught myself, a limiting belief that told me that you can't do that. You can't achieve that. That opportunity is not for you. Now, meanwhile, I'm over here at 10. I got all these gifts and things on the inside. And if we're honest, like for those of us in this room, we're extra. So like we don't do things regular. We don't do things subpar, right? And so when I don't go for the thing, it's because there's something in me. And I think we have to all recognize that we are not the mistakes that we made. Whatever it was, no matter how big it was. Why? Because when you know better, you do better. So for the women that you see look like they're killing the game, it's because they're doing better because they learned from some things that they messed up in the past. And so I think it's important for us to put those tools in our toolbox. And like you said, now we can pass that on to another sister. Self-forgiveness doesn't just have to be a solo journey. It's a communal thing because we all have something on the inside that we can forgive ourselves for. So, Tara, how do you peel back the layers and begin your healing journey? Like in a practical way, what does that look like?
So I think the important thing about peeling back layers is getting to the root. A lot of times we want to put a Band-Aid on something and then feel like, okay, let me just rip this Band-Aid off. But there's a deeper issue there. So like even though the wound on top might look healed, there's really something underneath that's going on. You could be having an infection and not knowing it. And I think it's one of those things. So even though we talk about peeling back layers, are we willing to be vulnerable? And it's not like I have a core group of women that I trust and I know I can say anything to, and they'll help me work through that without judging me. And even after that work, which I love their encouragement, but there's still work for me to do. So when I make a decision to get to the root, sometimes it's not pretty. But the thing that I love about my faith is that I can be gracefully broken. And normally when I get to that place of brokenness is when God can do his greatest work, because I'm now so vulnerable that there's nothing left for me to hide. So I think that's...
Lady V?
I believe that, when I spoke earlier about all of the thoughts that come into our minds, that we must be intentional about recognizing when a thought comes into your mind that is negative, that is self-incriminating. And with the thousands and thousands of thoughts, they just pile onto each other. And there's research that shows that the brain believes everything you tell it. It believes every single thing that you're telling it. So if you are rehearsing negativity and it's just piling on, those are those deep layers. And it's not going to be excavated in one day, in one moment, in one Hey Girl conference, but it takes daily work. Doing self-checks. Maybe every few minutes, check yourself and say, how do I rate myself right now? And if I can't say a 10, then I know that I need to do some work and peel back some layers. Be conscious of what you're telling yourself. So Britnee mentioned a few minutes ago that she knows she's a 10, but then she's shying back from some things. Then you have to ask yourself, what am I telling myself? What conversation am I having in my head? and peel back those layers one at a time, 1 minute at a time, one situation at a time, until you get to that place where you realize, all right, I'm a walk worthy of who God called me to be.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the things when we talk about peeling back the layers, what I hear is self-awareness in doing those check-ins. And so I love how I was in the yoga session earlier today, and it was about giving yourself permission to pause. Many of us, I'm not going to say all of us, but many of us are living so fast that we don't even take the time to do those check-ins. So we're out here just existing, we're out here reacting, and we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to heal. One of the things I know about sleep is that sleep is restorative. And so when you're sick, the best thing you can do is sleep. When you're exhausted, the best thing you can do is sleep. When you need to study for a test, the best thing you can do is sleep. And so we have to give our emotional selves the opportunity to sleep, to rest, so that that restorative process can take place. And so when we talk about peeling back the layers, you mentioned the root. Picking that thing up from the root. And I think sometimes we need each other to be able to identify the root. Because you might be like, yeah, I got a therapist, I'm good. That's not, we got to look at the root. Before you can even know that therapy is the next step, or whatever the next step is, you got to be able to identify the root. So how important, I think you alluded to this, how important is your community in your self-forgiveness journey? Because if you're not around the right people, they will help you to perpetuate that self-unforgiveness. Yeah, girl, you better 7 like you never 7 before. Like, no. How important is accountability in this journey?
So I think it's important to have friends that are going to be brutally honest, and I have that. And it's just one of them things, like I'm grateful for that, because especially sometimes, we were talking about a little earlier, like even in being married, right? Like, one of my girlfriends was like, no, it's you. It's not, it's all you. And I think it's good to have that, because like you're saying, if we never ever go to a rough place, it's not a real friendship. It just isn't. And so I'm grateful for the people that are like, yeah, you need to check that. And I think it's so important, like the people that you have around you to help you do that daily mental health check and that emotional well-being check. Like, no, how are you today? And it's one of them things, like, no, I'm asking you, how are you? Because I want to know how you're doing. And I think it's important to have that as a community. And once again, if you have to go to a rough place, and then for me, when I go to rough places with the people in my life, the only thing I can do is love them more, because they love me just that much to not let me stay in that place. And I'm grateful for that, because again, if you don't have that in your circle, you might want to check your friends. But it's just one of them things, like you want to make sure that you have that. And when you have that, value that. Yeah, sometimes they may say something that you don't necessarily want to hear, but that you need to hear it. And it's all about forgiving yourself. It's not to beat you up, but it's about to say, hey, love yourself enough to go to this rough place in our friendship so that we can be better together, because we have work to do for the kingdom.
Yes, ma'am. So, Lady V, what are some challenges that have caused you to stumble because of unforgiveness within yourself? Like, what are some things that you struggled with that maybe someone in here might be struggling with?
I think not being conscious of my own voice that is in my head, or my own internal tape recorder. One of the things that you heard me say in the spoken word that I did was that my parents were very good with, constantly speaking positive. My mother told me I was pretty every day. So what made it that when I got to school and those 7th graders said something different, that it canceled what she said? And I think because I was not investing enough time in telling myself and setting up those affirmations where I would speak to myself, have those conversations that would match what my parents were saying. And I think that when we are not aware of ourselves and we gravitate to what other people are saying, what they're saying is not the gospel truth. It's not the truth at all. And if we build up our own self-affirmations, our own positive thinking, our own positive speech, our own comebacks for whatever is thrown at us, I think that would help in the long run, and you won't carry things for so many years.
Absolutely. And so when we talk about, again, I'm thinking about us in this room as the women who carry the world, right? When we carry unforgiveness toward ourselves, it's a poison to boundary setting because we're trying to make up for whatever it is that we're not forgiving ourselves internally. And so by saying yes to everything, we're trying to show ourselves valuable, to convince ourselves that we are valuable, and that causes us to stumble and struggle when it comes to setting boundaries. And then we get into another hole where we need to forgive ourselves. So how do we practically support each other in this journey of unforgiveness? How do you support your sister in that? I know we talked about telling the truth in love. Is there a practical way about that? Because we can say it, but what does that look like?
So what I think is that we have a tendency to make it more difficult than what it really is, because it's not always easy, but it is simple. So it really just depends on how you choose to apply that. And I think about making it simplistic. It's just constantly checking in, like that mental health and that emotional well-being. That's something daily, sometimes if not moment by moment. And so although at times we may not, and this is not the truth, you guys, it's just not. Although we look in the mirror and we don't like what we see, you have to really recognize that that's a lie, because we're created according to our faith, at least mine. I'm created in God's image and God's likeness, so he didn't make a mistake. I'm not a mistake. And so even on my worst day, even when I don't measure up, I'm not a mistake. I'm still worthy. So if he's worthy and if he's more than enough, I'm worthy and I'm enough. And the thing is, I say that confidently because I wasn't always at that place, but I refuse to go back to where I was. So now, yep, I am worthy. Yep, I am a bad mama jamma. Yep. And you constantly speak those things over yourself. And to me, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
I agree. And I think also as far as how we support each other, it's listening out for the language of self-unforgiveness. So what are some things that we could possibly listen out for? Like, what does self-unforgiveness sound like? Because it's not like we walk around with a sign that said, I don't forgive me. But what does it look like? What does it sound like so that we can identify it on our sisters?
I think that it could be in our posture, if our head is down, if we look like we're shrinking back. If you say, I'm not good at this, or I'm never able to do this, all those negative thoughts that come out in words, those are clear signs. And I believe in, how they say, if you see something, say something. And it's a safety thing. So if you see that in your sister, you ought to say something. Give them a compliment. Talk about their value. They may not be able to see it in that very moment. But if you are able to give them that compliment, and guess what? Giving compliments not only does something for the person that receives it, but it does something for the person that gives it. And so when you recognize your sister down in herself, down in her abilities, remember, she's a 10, and she may need that reminder. And so you need to give that right then and there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a responsibility, ladies and gentlemen who are in the room. We have a responsibility to do that and be that for one another, because we don't always see ourselves. Right? We're usually out and about, we're doing all the things, and we don't see the shrinking. We don't see the head bound. We don't see that we're not walking in full posture. But it takes a loving sister who's walking alongside to say, hey, sis, Chin up. Get your head up. I'll say that. Girl, get your head up. Because we need that. We need that. And so, final thoughts, as we prepare to do something else with you ladies, final thoughts on encouraging us to forgive ourselves.
So I believe what's key is just continue to speak positivity over your own life. What works for me is if I'm feeling really low for some reason, I go to the Word and I start to look for everything that is encouraging. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm created in His image. I know the plans that He has for me, plans to prosper me, not to harm me, but to give me a hope in the future. I just keep saying that to myself over and over again. And again, sometimes it might be daily, but it might be moment by moment. And I think we also need to remember that in that moment, not continually, but in that moment, it's okay to say that you're not okay. Right? Like sometimes my husband, especially dealing with these hormones, a woman of a certain age, sometimes my husband is like, babe, how are you? I'm like, I'm not good right now. He's like, all right, I'll come back and talk to you when you are. So it's just one of them things like you got to be brutally honest with yourself and just keep, even if you don't believe it yet, that's cool, but keep speaking it until you do.
Final thoughts for me would be, again, be very conscious of your thinking and your thoughts. And when you notice that your thoughts are derailing, bring it back in, snatch it back in. Just to connect, I don't know how many of you go to church or read the Word, but the Bible talks about bringing every thought into captivity. And so when that thought comes in your mind and it doesn't belong there, you're under arrest. Snatch it back up and say, do you line up with what God has said about me? And if you don't, you gotta go. No, you can't stay here. Don't ruminate on it. Don't press the rewind button because you are a 10. You gotta remember that. And if you're thinking less than 10, there's some work to be done.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, clap for Lady B. Clap for her. So my thought to leave with you all is to not take yourself so seriously. I used to be so afraid of messing up in front of people. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be together. And I've learned to laugh at myself. If I trip, y'all, I'm going to laugh on the way down. I learned to embrace that imperfection. And it also is disarming for other people. And so I think when you walk in forgiveness, continual self-forgiveness, it's a blessing to everybody around you. And so I've learned to just laugh at myself. And a friend said to me years ago that I've never forgotten, be nice to you. Be nice to yourself. Be nice to yourself because you deserve it. And treat yourself as you would treat others. I know we say treat others as you want to be treated. Treat yourself as you treat others. Because those of us in this room, we're lovers. We're nurturers. We're supporters. Love, nurture, support yourself as well. And you won't have to beg for it from other places.
All right, ladies, we want to invite you on this self-forgiveness journey with us. And we are saying goodbye to the things in the past that we're holding on to, the times we've messed up, the times that we have held ourselves hostage to things that nobody else remembers. And we are saying hello to self-forgiveness and all of the gifts that come with self-forgiveness. And today, as we are closing out, we are going to go through a list of things that we are just burying and saying goodbye to as we forgive ourselves. And if you hear something that resonates with you, we want you to come on up to the stage, grab a bracelet. The bracelet says, forgiveness granted, Hey Girl 2024. So if you hear something, don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Come get a bracelet and go on back to your seat as we are going through our list.
Okay. So hello, peace. Hello, joy. Hello, love.
Forgive yourself
Hello,
for judging yourself.
Hello,
That's
joy,
you.
it's
Come on up.
horizon. So hello, peace. Hello, joy. Hello, love.
Forgive yourself for the
Hello,
things that you
strength.
said out of
Hello,
anger.
hope.
If that's
It's a
you,
new
come on up.
horizon. Oh, hello.
Forgive
peace.
yourself when you
Hello,
knew better
joy.
and you
Hello,
still made the wrong
love.
choice.
Hello, strength. Hello, hope.
Forgive
It's a
yourself
new
for the times
horizon.
that you did not stand up for yourself.
Hello, peace. Hello, joy. Hello, love.
Forgive yourself for feeling
Hello,
unable
strength.
to say no.
Hello, hope. It's a new horizon.
Forgive
Oh,
yourself
fear is
for the
not my
times that you
future.
made the
You
wrong
are.
decision.
You are. Sickness
Forgive
is not
yourself
my
for
story.
accepting
You
less
are.
than you deserve.
You are. And heartbreak is not my
Forgive
home.
yourself for
You
not
are.
learning the lesson and
You
repeating the
are.
cycle over and
death
over
is not the
and over
end.
again.
You are. You are. So
Forgive
hello,
yourself for
peace.
staying longer
Hello,
than you
joy.
should have,
Hello,
whether it was a job, a
love.
relationship. Come on up.
Hello, strength. Hello, hope. It's a new horizon.
Forgive yourself for saying
strength.
the wrong thing.
Hello,
If that's you,
joy.
come on up.
Hello, love.
Forgive yourself for letting others and yourself disrespect your boundaries.
Hello, peace.
Forgive yourself for
Hello,
unconsciously giving your power away.
hello, strength.
Forgive
Hello,
yourself for
hope. It's
past
a new
behaviors and words
horizon.
that you expressed out of
Hello,
anger,
peace.
anxiety,
Hello,
sadness,
joy.
or
Hello,
ignorance.
love. Hello,
Forgive
strength.
yourself for sticking with it when your gut told you to leave.
It's a new horizon.
Forgive yourself for listening to your inner
It's a
critic.
new horizon. It's a new
Forgive yourself for the
horizon.
small mistakes that nobody
It's a new
remembers but you.
horizon. It's a new
Forgive yourself for
horizon.
lacking self-love,
It's a new
self-awareness,
horizon.
self-compassion, and
It's a new
self-confidence.
horizon.
Forgive yourself for seeking approval from others.
Hello, peace. Hello,
Forgive
joy.
yourself for dwelling in
Hello,
anger,
love.
guilt, shame, or resentment
Hello,
towards
strength.
yourself
Hello,
or
hope.
others.
It's a new horizon.
Forgive yourself for what you perceive
Hello,
as your
peace.
imperfections
Hello,
and
joy.
your
Hello,
limitations.
love.
Forgive yourself for when you did
Hello,
not
strength.
recognize your own
Hello,
worth
hope.
and
It's
you
a
believed
new
you weren't good
horizon.
enough.
It's a new horizon.
Forgive yourself for giving away
It's a
your
new
power.
horizon.
Forgive yourself for sacrificing your own needs.
It's a new horizon.
And forgive yourself for thinking lessons you learned were a little too
It's a
late.
new horizon.
Forgive yourself for not knowing then what you know now.
It's a new horizon.
And lastly, forgive yourself for putting your love in the wrong places.
Hello, joy. Hello, love. Hello, strength. Hello, hope. It's a new horizon. It's a new horizon. It's a new horizon. It's a new horizon.